Hey, good morning, and a Happy New Year, and welcome to the first show of the Ride Along Radio show for 2016. So we're at show 13 now, and I hope that's not a...
Has it been that long?
It's been that long, man, yeah.
13's always been a lucky number for me.
Well, good. So here we are, show 13, man. So the premise of the Ride Along Radio show is that our panel is comprised of 3 former police officers, and we're going to give you our perspective on news stories, current events, topics that impact both the police and the community, and we're going to give it to you straight. We don't have any political agendas. Nobody's running for office. And because we're all former police officers, we can speak freely without fear of consequences, repercussions, or retribution by the administration. So with that, and this theme in 2016, we're going to keep pushing in that direction. It's worked pretty well for us so far. To introduce our panel, my name is George Holt, 25 years in Southern California law enforcement, spent most of that time as a supervisor, worked a variety of assignments, of course, patrol. Kent and I work bicycle patrol together. I work narcotics, I work SWAT, I work canine, a bunch of different stuff. So a pretty well-rounded career. I managed to avoid internal affairs, and that's probably the shining
You probably
shining
worked on it,
accomplishment.
that's why.
Yeah, really, right? I was in the case file, too many red case folders. But I got out alive, and I got out intact and with a pension. So my co-host here.
I'm Kent.
Is Kent.
Worked with George, an L.A. County area agency for about, off and on, about 14 years. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man.
Talking about things.
Yep, good stuff. Good stuff. And normally we have Gil Contreras joining us. Gil's not with us this week. And in his stead is our once and again guest co-host coming to the stage, Mr. Roger Rod. And Roger can tell you about himself.
Well, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. And I'm not really a former police officer. I met these guys in the back seat of the car. They had me picked up. I had 3 pounds of heroin. And by the time I got to the evidence locker, there was about 1/4 gram left. I don't know what happened.
We don't know what happened to it. So, yeah, Roger is a comedian now, as you can tell.
What did you do when you were working on the department?
I was an 830.2 at the state, and the truth of the matter is I do bow in deference to these 2 gentlemen. They both had full careers. I was a little less than 3 years, and I always respect and take my hat off to anybody that did the full ride. It is the most honorable profession one could ask of when it's been done properly.
Yes,
and
when it's done right, sure.
I'm done with 2 gentlemen right here that have done it correctly, and I certainly would say that it does give you a perspective only after 1 shift of what you thought about police officers as a person and what you pick up just with 1 8-hour shift in the car.
You and I probably could share some things, too. I think we're probably going to be in the same wavelength, whether you were there for 3 years or not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The perspective you get, just 1 8-hour shift is enough. That the public, I just wish a ride-along doesn't get it done. It gives you an idea.
It does give you an idea, and I would encourage you to go on a ride-along with your local agency, as long as you
well, it's different
have the right reasons for going.
When you put the stuff on and you start exercising.
Whole new game.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be like saying, I know what is black because I have black friends, as opposed to actually being black for a day.
Yeah, it's a little different,
It's a
right?
whole different idea.
A little different. Yeah. Is he still on the same wavelength after you said that?
I know what it's like to be black.
Yes, I know what it's like to be black. Yes, I do this. Because I had one family in my neighborhood that grew up, and I grew up in the hood. We had this one house there.
Right, and the guy, the father was a doctor and the mother was a lawyer, and so,
I think it was Bill Cosby, I think is what it was. That's, anyway.
Right.
My neighborhood was the same way. We had a veterinarian that lived in the area.
See what I mean?
He had the biggest house, multimillionaire.
Oh, wow.
An inventor, stuff like that.
But, well, that's. I wish that were representative of most of Black America. Then you might have an idea, but we'll get there. All right. So, beside our police backgrounds, which we have in common, where we sometimes vary is on our perspectives on some of the issues. And I want to address something from a lot of comments we get on social media. Is that, you guys are always taking the cop side, or mostly you take the cop side. Guilty as charged. And here's why. And it's not that we set out to be biased, but everybody has some bias. And when you worked in a career, especially such an immersive type of career, that it's not just a job, it's kind of a lifestyle, you're going to have some bias toward that. And anybody who tells you that they don't have biases, whether they are a veterinarian or a police officer, they flip burgers, do hair, prepare tax returns, or drive buses, everybody's got biases. And as long as we recruit our police officers from the population of human beings, you're going to have people with biases. Now, having said that, we don't always look at some of these incidents. We talk about high-profile use of force cases. We don't always say that the police officer was right. In fact, we've been critical, openly critical, of police actions that have been taken. But remember, this is the Ride Along radio show. Your panel is comprised of police officers. I'm not Katie Couric. This isn't Al Roker. That's not Don Lemon.
Okay.
So we're not a news panel. We are a panel that hopefully you tune in to hear our unique perspective as police officers. Don't complain when you get it, because that's what you asked for, we assume, and that's what we're going to give to you. And again, I'm not running for office. You running for office?
Absolutely not.
Kent?
Would have me.
Negative.
Yeah.
The background check would kill me.
So we don't. We're going to give it to you straight. And at least you know how we really feel about stuff. Look at it that way. We're going to shoot you straight, and no reason not to. And the reason I brought this up is the last show we did, which was what was it? It was the 20. Sometime in December. It was right before Christmas, right? We didn't have a show on Christmas Eve, so the week prior to that. And actually, we came in on Tuesday. It was 12/22. We came in on Tuesday that time, and we covered the Noel Aguilar shooting by the LA County Sheriff's Department. And for some reason, that topic struck a major nerve with people. And there's a lot of feedback on social media, particularly on the YouTube channel. And again, hey, we're just telling you what we see, how we see it, based on our training and experience. Also, though, keep in mind that we're all citizens and all people. And even when we were active police officers, when you got off duty and took that uniform off, you're back in the citizen populace, in the civilian populace. So we understand what it's like to have to deal with the police, because we weren't born cops, okay? Again, when you're off duty, you're typically off duty. But we also have something that most people don't have, which is a police perspective and the willingness to share it with you. Because a lot of people are not going to share with you the straight dope. And like I said, we're always going to do that. So there we are. But I just wanted to say that because it's been we've had a couple of weeks since the last show, and that's something that's kind of percolated up to the top.
So it's been negative on there?
Some of it's been good, and some of it has been where you guys are always taking the cop side, or you mostly do. And hey man, this ain't the Black Panther Network. I mean, what did you think you were going to get when you tuned in? We're just telling you how we feel though, and it's again, just respect the fact that we're shooting you straight. That's kind of what this is about. But we have some news stories because we always do news of the day. So I know Kent's got an interesting story there. You want to?
Yeah, mine's kind of minor. It has to do with the shooting that had happened up in San Francisco, where 32-year-old Catherine Steinle, or Kate Steinle, was killed on the pier.
Fisherman's Wharf. I remember that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The individual's name that did the shooting was Juan Francisco Lopez, and he had been serving, or had just been released from serving 46 months in federal prison for reentry into the country.
And they released him in the country?
They released him somewhere in the country from a detention center. Of course, he gravitated immediately like a heat-seeking missile back to San Francisco, where it is a what do they call it up
Safe
there?
haven or something like that?
Well, it's
sanctuary city.
Sanctuary city. One of many that are earmarked as sanctuary cities.
Right.
And while there, he had possession of a stolen firearm from, I believe, a Bureau of Land Management officer that it was stolen from, and the gun was discharged. She was hit in the head and killed on the pier
right on Fisherman's Wharf, like Pier 21 or something.
So it has to do with the sheriff at the time, who I believe his name is, if I'm pronouncing it right, is Mikarimi, and he had a policy that he would not turn over any illegal aliens that had been or that are found in his city to federal officials. It was a policy that he was adhering to that flew in the face of federal law. Is actually a violation of federal law. Nobody seems to be enforcing it. Wink, wink.
Right.
I believe he was recalled, and a new sheriff stepped in, a female sheriff by the name of Vicki Hennessy, and she promises to reverse her predecessor's policies, barring deputies at the city jail from communicating with federal immigrant agents. So that's a good sign. Will that happen anywhere else in this country? I doubt it. But it's going to take a travesty like that to wake people up, and it takes people voting and taking action.
Well, sheriff is an elected position. A lot of people, if you're not paying attention to local politics, that's kind of lost on a lot of people. But the sheriff is elected.
It'll be lost on you
official.
until somebody gets shot in the head that you're is a loved one or a family
Right. Then there's a recall like there was
How did this
anybody
happen?
else. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Pay
attention
to something like that. We're actually moving quite along in our show pretty rapidly here, but I did want to touch on this. This is a hot, not necessarily a hot topic, but certainly a current topic. The state of Nebraska, they've introduced a bill that would waive drug charges during medical emergencies. So if someone were to have an overdose, typically somebody's overdosing. A lot of times the other participants in the narcotic thing would leave them there. Or if they're lucky, they take them to the emergency room and push them out of the car and keep going. And
so who's it waived on exactly?
It's waived so that if you're, say, a bunch of junkies sitting around a bunch of heroin users sitting around a shooting gallery and somebody overdoses, that they can call the police. And when the police get there, because it's a medical emergency, the person who called and the people who were there are not subject to drug charges.
So they should just pack their pants full of everything that they've got.
Well, let me say this.
With them so that how about afterwards?
It's a different, here's what they're saying, and this is Senator Adam Moorfield of Lincoln, Nebraska, is introducing the bill this week. And it says the bill would shield users from possession charges if they seek help for themselves or someone else who is overdosing. Moorfield said too many drug users won't call 911 in life-threatening emergencies because they are afraid of the consequences. And this is his quote: "The bottom line is that our drug policy should put saving lives first and punishment second when it comes to drug possessions," Moorfield said. "When it comes to drug manufacturing and distribution, that's a different story." So if you're sitting around getting high, whether you're hitting a pipe and you have a heart attack or you're shooting dope and you overdose, again, this will certainly save lives. It certainly will. And I think it's a common sense thing that's taken a step in the right direction in terms of having some kind of reasonable drug policy. Because the fact of the matter is people have died as a result of this. Some famous people, in fact, have died because nobody wanted to call 911, even though this person is sitting there in front of you basically dying, because they don't want to end up going to jail themselves. Or they don't want to put that person in a position. They figure, oh, he'll be okay. I don't want to snitch him out. And then he goes to jail.
You know what I think they ought to do? I think they ought to bring back payphones. Do you find a payphone anywhere that you go that you can stick a quarter into and make that call?
Oh man,
stiff in that
at
911
the mall
call.
They have them at the mall, maybe.
Yeah. You have
Remember,
to do
they
it
used
on
to be
your
in
cell phone
the
now.
we used to have them in the housing projects, right at the edge of the projects.
Right.
Yeah. You could go and drop a dime.
Right.
So for you youngsters out there, you may have heard the term dropping a dime. That comes from the fact that when payphones, or at least when I was a kid, payphones took a dime. And you literally dropped a dime in the slot, it activated the phone, and you could punch the numbers in. And I find myself having to explain that because a lot of youngsters don't know why we say roll up the window or why we dial telephone numbers. These are anachronisms you have to look up for yourself, but I'm more than happy to explain the dropping a dime phrase because it's something we use in our profession quite a bit. So, no, they don't have payphones like that anymore, man. They're very rare, But even with a burner phone or whatever, I mean, anyway, what this will do is no matter what, you could pick up any phone, your phone or whatever, you call it in for somebody, and I think it's being called a Good Samaritan. Good Samaritan law is the name that they're putting on the bill, right?
Just in case they know about you when you come there, you should probably load up your trunk with all of your heroin and bring it with you and pack your pockets and walk in and say,
"Hey, you can't touch me." It doesn't mean it won't be confiscated. No dope fiend wants that.
It's not for distribution,
but it won't be.
Just in case he forgot to empty his pockets before he took his buddy down there.
Well, that was my news story for today.
Well, when we come back from break, you'll see how fast I become the asshole on this show.
All right, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and get into our topic today, which is executive actions to reduce gun violence. And you can call in at 323-293-3375, and we'll see you right after the break. All right, and we're back. Welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. I am George.
Kent.
Roger.
And here is Roger. So before the break, and our topic today is the executive actions on reducing gun violence, or the executive actions to reduce gun violence. But before that, we were talking about a news story where this bill would waive drug charges during medical emergencies in Nebraska. And I know Roger's got some input on that.
Nothing new there. I always want to start the argument where I think it should, and that is if you want to put a total end overnight to gangs, the mafia, any kind of organized crime, if you legalize drugs, prostitution, and gambling, they're out of business. These are paternalistic laws, they're victimless laws, and the only crimes that come out of them is because of the fact that they are illegal. We need to treat drug addiction and alcoholism as a disease instead of a crime.
What about prostitution?
Absolutely.
A disease?
A victimless crime.
A disease, though?
Well, if you go to the wrong one, absolutely. You're guaranteed that.
You know, I will say this about criminal enterprises. They're going to find a way to break a law.
Prohibition should prove that. Prohibition should have proven that
so we saw that.
Ago.
Prohibition gave rise to public enemy number one, Al Capone.
Absolutely.
And it was a major influence in terms of the rise of organized crime in this country. But even if all those things became legal, we've seen gangs get involved in stolen vehicles. We've seen gangs get involved in stolen guns. We've seen gangs get involved. It's going to have this criminal enterprise, but they won't be as rich and as powerful as they are now.
Take an enormous bite out of their
Huge.
power structure
A
because
huge
you have
bite.
deflated all of their income.
And you know, I think that one day, I think maybe we'll see that happen. It's just, you know how that goes, man. It's always a slow progress is a slow process, as they say, and I think we'll see that. But I do like the idea of this bill. I think that's something that's going to save lives.
I do as well. And before we move on, if we have the time, or do we have the time?
No, go for it.
I was just going to say that you began the program very interestingly talking about the police shootings and the fact that I tend to look at them that the classic case of three sides to an argument. There's the police side, there's the citizen side, and then there's the truth.
Exactly.
That's what it comes down to. And too many people are basing their opinions, whatever side they weigh in on footage that looks like it's from the Loch Ness Monster. You never see what happened before it began, and you can't see anything clear enough for people to be as definitively positive on either side of the fence as to what really took place.
It's like that Aguilar shooting. Boy, that was the most tumultuous video.
Yeah, and there's a lot of movement, and there was a lot of stuff you couldn't see because the tussle was in so close.
Yes.
And
you had to break it apart because at each stage when something happened, you also had to look at where the deputies were at.
What could
where
they
the
each see?
suspect was.
Yeah, what could they each see, too?
It's just I've had this conversation with a couple of people since then. Of course, I get the first response is that the deputies really did a bad job on that. And,
right.
And after talking to them, though, and helping explain what happened, they sit there and ponder it a little bit. You know, they have to take things into consideration about. They really don't actually understand what happened.
But that's exactly the thing, and that's what I think we're here to do, is to help you understand from the perspective of the deputies, because we're all sitting and watch the same video, so we all know what we see, but you don't know the perspective of those two guys fighting with that guy over that gun unless you've been there, and you don't know what they've been trained to do, you don't know what they're thinking about, and you don't really understand what it's like to be in that position without us to kind of guide you and give you our input or to lend you our expertise, if you will. So a lot of what we do is explaining things from our standpoint, and because we're not in a position to judge anybody guilty or not guilty.
Nobody is, especially on the basis of that footage, because as you mentioned, you not only can't see, here comes a big one, you can't hear what is taking place.
Yeah, you can't hear a whole lot. Yeah, usually.
There's the side of it that I saw some very horrendous tactical police maneuvers, but on the other side of the fence, what would the public have said if somebody was shooting a gun around and the police sat back and didn't do a fucking thing?
Right.
So
then it's dereliction of duty. Then the police are cowards, right? Then we're punks, you know. And then, the police are no good. I heard somebody say on another show, I've never called the police for anything. Well, consider yourself lucky, because if something happens, you're going to call. And you know you're going to call, and you're going to expect us to show up and put in some work. So everybody says that until you need the police.
It's the one time that all of us are going to just blanch at this statement, but it is the truth that we do, as officers, share something in common with lawyers. Everybody hates them until you need one.
Yeah, exactly. And then you need one like yesterday you needed one.
Yes.
You know. Okay, so we're going to segue into our topic because we've got our special guest waiting to join in. And actually, can we bring our guest in now? And our special guest today is John Risenhoover, who is a retired ATF agent, and he's also a gun blogger, and he's an executive with CCW Safe organization. John, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
All right. So did I get all that right in terms of your resume there? I know I condensed it quite a bit.
Close enough for government work.
Okay. Yeah, in government work, retired ATF agent, right? So how many years did you do with the ATF, John?
26 years.
Okay, and for those who don't know, and I like to explain acronyms as we go along. So ATF is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and now it's explosives too, right?
Yeah, they added that. We didn't get flag burning, though. I thought we were going to get that for sure.
Yeah, not yet, right? But yeah, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms sounds like a good time until you get to the explosives part. So
actually, the explosives can be fun too. It's just a matter how you use them.
Well, exactly, depending on how you use them. Exactly right. So, John, I know that your subject matter expertise is gun laws, and you have some very unique ideas on how to reduce gun violence. And so our topic today, again, is President Obama's executive actions to reduce gun violence. Now, these are different. People say, well, he's going to make us do this, and what's going to happen next? As Kent and I were discussing off air, executive orders are one thing, executive action is another. They're not quite identical. But still, these are moves that that the president has laid out. And I actually have a list here, just a real quick bullet point for people to kind of catch everybody up on this. So the president came before the country about 2 weeks ago and laid out these bullet points, and then he followed it up with a town hall meeting to speak to people who were on both sides of the issue, whether they be people who own guns or people who have had family members that were victimized by gun violence, and just people who were concerned American citizens on this topic. And so I'm going to go through each of the steps, and then we can come back around and talk about them. So one of the things he says, the first thing was keep guns out of the wrong hands through background checks. Okay, and apparently there was allegedly some loopholes there, which people are calling the gun show loophole, that said that you didn't need to have a background check to buy certain guns. I think there was an assertion made that you could go on the internet and buy guns without going through a background check, which is, as far as I know, is a fallacy. I've never seen it, because if it was possible, I'd done it already. And then also getting the ATF involved, getting the Justice Department involved, instead of talking in terms of having complete criminal history available, and people who are disqualified because of mental illness or qualifying crimes of domestic violence. And they also want to make the background check system to be more efficient, and they're going to be processing background checks 24/7 now. The second one was to make our community safer from gun violence. And one of those items, and John, you may find this interesting, was that the budget for next year, fiscal year 2017, will include funding for 200 new ATF agents and investigators to help enforce our gun laws. A lot of what you hear people say is, well, there's already gun laws on the books. We just aren't enforcing them like we should. So that hopefully will address that. And a third bullet point was increase mental health treatment and reporting to the background check system. How many times have we heard people say, we don't have a gun problem, we have a mental illness problem. We have a problem with evil people or people who are mentally ill, and that's what we need to deal with, and not promulgate more gun-related laws. So to address that, the administration is proposing a new $500 million investment to increase access to mental health care. Interestingly enough, the Social Security Administration is also going to start including information in the background check system about beneficiaries who are prohibited from possessing a firearm for mental health reasons. And I think that's a new thing. And then this is the one I find the most interesting, and the one that I really think that I'm most interested in, put it like that, is to shape the future of gun safety technology by having these alleged quote unquote smart gun technology available as an option for firearms, which would stop someone who was not the owner of that firearm or did not have a corresponding piece of hardware, be it a bracelet or ring or whatever, from activating and firing that handgun or rifle or whatever it is. So again, John, I know you got some stuff to throw in there. So what are your thoughts on some of this, and what do you think might work better?
Well, to be honest, I really don't have any issues with anything he did, except I don't think any of those actions are actually going to reduce gun violence. And when I talk about gun violence, I want to be clear, I'm talking about criminal shooters. Often law enforcement's getting drug into mental health issues. And
all the time.
And it's not in our toolbox. We are not psychiatrists. We don't have those abilities. I've had to deal with people who've been adjudicated mentally defective with guns, and their absolute defense is the fact that they're mentally defective, and they've already been adjudicated. So it's the catch-22. So it goes around and around.
Well, now part of that is to keep guns out of the hands of people who are legal guns out of the hands of people who've been adjudicated to be mentally defective, right?
Right. And in mental health issues, they're very sensitive to let those records out and control them because they can label and stigmatize people. Look
Sure.
at law enforcement, how many people don't go get counseling in law enforcement after a traumatic event because they don't want to be labeled. It's
Exactly.
a real issue.
Exactly right.
So when he came out with those things, it's not so much I thought these things were horrible. I just don't think they're going to really have an impact. One of the things he wanted to propose was dealing without a license, which there's never been a blue line to say when you cross over into dealing without a license. 5 guns is dealing without a license, or is it 6 guns? More often than not, in ATF, we would just send them nasty letter after nasty letter if we thought they were dealing without a license and ask them to stop. Because even if you do catch them, it's no jail time involved in it. When you always hear these, it's 5 years and $250,000 fine. Well, it's going to be more like no fine and probation. And
So now, is this what they mean when they're talking about straw purchasers? Are you talking about that kind of person, or a person who actually is making money on a regular basis selling to people without a license?
Have a license, and you're selling at gun shows, and you're in the business, but are you really in the business? The law was never well written, and more often than not, when laws aren't well written, law enforcement stays away from them because we know at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to prosecute a case when the law doesn't really define what the violation is.
Right.
Federal law describes who is a gun dealer and who is not. This is Kent, by the way. It does it not, right. and it describes somebody who has a collection and is selling off a private collection. It gives descriptions on who these people are and how they fit into a category. But you're specifically talking about how many guns can a person sell before they're considered a dealer and should be licensed, correct?
Right. And in the past, we said it was the majority of your income came from that. But, we've got a lot of people who buy and sell guns regularly because it's their hobby.
Right. Exactly right.
Sell them.
100%.
And it takes us off focus. And that was my biggest complaint when we talk about, I already proposed things that we should have done. And one of the things I would say is you take ATF licensing, which is our regulatory side of our house, and move them over to the Tax and Trade Bureau of the IRS and give them ticketing authority. It's not a criminal violation. These things need to be handled at an administrative level 99% of the time. And when you can't do it that way, then you bring them into the law enforcement side. But we waste our limited resources worrying about, did Uncle Tom sell 7 guns or did he sell 12 guns? It gets us off mission. We don't have those kind of resources.
Well, I think the answer to that is the 200 new ATF agents that are proposed in the next budget, right? Agents and investigators. And I don't know, does the ATF have non-sworn investigators like the DEA has with the diversion investigators?
Yeah, we have those guys too. But the issue is, you can't even do that. Congress has to approve our budget,
Exactly.
so you can propose 200 new agents, but none of them ever come true.
Gotcha.
And secondly, for criminal prosecutions, and you guys know this already, there's a limited number of prosecutions you get to do in federal court because there's only so many U.S. attorneys.
Right.
There's only so many judges.
So you got to prioritize.
They have to prioritize. So are you more worried about some guy selling guns and he doesn't have FFL? Or are you really more worried about somebody who's a convicted felon with the gun? Or are you worried about a girl buying a gun from somebody who shouldn't have a gun? Or are you worried about the kid who's out shooting up the neighborhood every night?
Well, the kid that's out shooting up the neighborhood is the serious direct public threat. I mean,
and that's the one ATF goes after the least. That's the lowest priority in the whole book because that takes work and effort and investigative skill as opposed to going after the simple felon in possession case. And I tell you right now, I made the joke last time on the show, if I live in the projects of New Orleans and I'm a 70-year-old man and I have multiple felony convictions, having a gun is just a good idea. Because I live in a bad area. It doesn't mean I'm up to shenanigans, but we need to focus our limited resources on the individuals who are actually pulling the trigger of guns and shooting at people. And with today's technologies and strategies, we can actually get these active serial shooters off the streets in a little amount of time and prevent a homicide. And
I like when you said shooting at people,
right?
Because you shouldn't have to hit somebody before you show up on the radar of law enforcement.
Well, they're going to try this strategy in LAPD. And one of the things that they admitted at LAPD is if somebody actually files an assault with a deadly weapon, and that pretty much means somebody shot at you but didn't hit you, but you stayed behind to file a complaint, that case most likely won't get a detective if you don't know who shot at you. And that's what most people don't understand. We ignore in this country the vast majority of gun violence until there's a dead body. And then we take it seriously. But what we see time and time again is these same young men, and they're just young, immature men acting stupid, shooting at people time and time again until they finally wound somebody, shooting more until they finally kill somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not where all the attraction is right now politically. It's about serial shooters and the San Bernardino deal, or it's not about the everyday crime that's happening out on the streets. Isn't it more of a state responsibility anyway?
Well, what you got, though, is you have this NIBIN situation, right? The National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. And, John, weren't you involved with NIBIN when you were at ATF?
Yeah. When I took over the NIBIN program, they were going to defund it and walk away from it because it just didn't work. We'd had it for over 15 years, and it was just not doing anything. Most of the machines sat idle around the nation. And we revamped it, and we came out with a strategy. It's sort of like having a great F-22, but if you don't have a pilot for it or a bombing target, it's just a really pretty aircraft sitting on the runway.
Right.
So what we did is refocus our strategy along with ShotSpotter into collecting all the evidence, working all these shootings, getting it all together in a real-time manner with the crime labs behind us, and identifying, and here's the funny part, serial shooters. These guys commit numerous shootings before we take them seriously. And
John, you said something that I want you to kind of expound on. ShotSpotter. Can you explain to people what ShotSpotter is and how you could use it?
ShotSpotter is an acoustic firearms detection system, and it's come a long way from its original introduction to police departments. Now they operate as a lease program. But the technology is really cool, and it'll identify a shot, send it over, verify that it really was a gunshot because it broke the sound barrier, so you're not just getting backfires.
Right.
It'll get a police within 30 seconds. It'll notify police within about 20 feet of where that gunshot just occurred.
Wow.
So instead of getting a call for service that we heard gunshots in the neighborhood, and now I'm driving around trying to figure out where the shooting occurred, and the only way I can really find it is if there's a dead body,
right,
or somebody or a blood trail. Instead, I'm getting within 15 feet of the shot, and I can jump on it. But what so many people don't understand in this country, in our inner cities, is the gun violence has gotten so bad that people don't even call 911 anymore when they hear gunshots.
Right, because it's too commonplace, unfortunately.
It's urban crickets. It's just part of the deal.
That's sad. I shouldn't even laugh at that, but it's sad, but it's true.
Isn't this military technology? What you're talking about? Isn't that the same type of technology?
It's mobile, which is military. ShotSpotter is pretty much a stationary system. There's new technologies that are coming online, which are very interesting. But ShotSpotter it's really high tech. It's run from a call center basically, where they verify every shot, and it comes back. And yeah, I know what you're talking about, and it's even cooler because they can return fire with that one. Right. And I don't think we're there yet in law enforcement.
No, not yet.
Fire.
Not yet.
My first thought is it's a real pity they didn't have this in Dealey Plaza. We'd know who really did it. But why don't we start off with
put it on the grassy knoll, right?
And you would see that all the shots came pretty much from there.
Yeah.
But the thought that I really liked the most that you began with, I'm sorry, what's the name of our distinguished guest again?
This is John Risenhoover. John, you're speaking with Roger Ride.
Hi, John. How are you?
Hey, Roger.
I really liked where you began, which is let's start the argument once again where it belongs. Laws are not going to fix anything on gun violence. Anytime I hear people think you're going to legislate gun behavior, I point to the fact that go to Google and type in guns that are made in jail. Take a look at that arsenal that comes out of jail, and in jail they look up your ass. How do you think you're going to stop people on the streets from getting guns if they are of a mindset to do so? It won't be from laws. It's behavior. And let's start with the fact that we don't have a justice system. We have a legal system. Somebody shoots up a church, kills 9 people, admits he did it, and they parade him around like a pet pony at a birthday party for 3 or 4 days. And where the fuck is he now? Where is justice for him? Overnight, that dude should be always of a mindset, I don't want to hear how they're sick, they're mentally ill. Sorry you got issued a bad brain, but they never have such a bad brain that is so weak they couldn't figure out, A, how to use a fucking gun, and B, they know right from wrong because you never see them standing there with the gun smoking saying, hey, look what I did. They're always trying to get away with it. They knew right from wrong,
that's
bad
consciousness of guilt, right?
I don't need any more than that. Sorry you got a bad brain. Sit down, roll up your sleeve. I got a fucking shot for you, and let's see how long it lasts then.
You know, Wow. No, but that's real, though. I mean, I agree with you 100%, man. I mean, you know, that kid, though, Dylan Roof that you're referring to, he said he almost didn't shoot those people because they had been so kind to him when he showed up for the prayer meeting. And he almost didn't do it.
What a swell guy.
Almost didn't do it. Yeah. And then he remembered why he came to do it, and he did it. So what I'm saying is this is not someone who doesn't understand right and wrong. This is somebody who he needs to go. It's clear premeditation. He needs to go.
And then it turns into the political issue that it always does. Take a look at Gabby Gifford. This piece of filth shoots up all those people, shoots her in the head. She has 20% of the life she used to have, goes to court, spits in everybody's face, and he doesn't end up getting executed because he has a poor defective brain because the bleeding hearts are screaming, let's get him some help. Fuck him. Strap him down in 15 minutes and watch how more of these shootings take place the next day.
Well, see, that's the thing. But there's other things, too. People say, well, don't publicize the name of the shooter because sometimes they do it because they want to get the publicity from it. So don't publicize the name of any mass shooters. Or, you know, punish them much more harshly.
How about put it on pay-per-view and give the money to the victims' families and watch the execution?
I'm
fine with that.
You could go with what he recommends and then go ahead and say his name as they're injecting him.
No, his name was.
You want notoriety.
Yeah, at the end.
His name was.
Yeah, his name was. There you go. Yeah, his name was. So he'll never even know.
Let me ask you a question about this. What exactly is your president trying to do here, George? With all of this activity.
Oh, he's black, so it's his president.
Yeah, like I'm the press secretary.
No,
our president, his quote was, and this addresses some of the things that were talked about today. His quote was, "We know that we can't stop every act of violence, but what if we tried to stop even one?" And so I do agree that something had to be done.
What?
Rome's not built in a day. You got to start someplace. And I think the whole idea was to stimulate conversation, which is happening now. You're starting to see people who aren't willing to talk about this
garbage
before.
Like this? It's inaccurate about how these guns are being sold over the internet. Why?
Yeah, that just wasn't true. That just wasn't true.
Yeah, that's right.
That just wasn't true.
This always happens. What do you think his real motivations are? He's talked about Australia. He's talked about Great Britain.
Yeah, gun-free countries.
And their gun control policies,
Sure.
which is confiscation.
Yeah.
What about that? Where do you think he's really going?
Well, I think that if he were going to go there, he's had 7 years to go there. It's kind of late to go in the last year of your second term that you weren't even guaranteed to get. If I was going to do something like this, I'd have started as soon as I got in office in January of 2009. That should have been his thing if he was going to try to do this, because now it's, what can he do in a year?
He knows it would be totally unpopular and impossible to do.
Why is it different now?
But he's revealed himself. Why is it different now? It's not any different now. It's not. He's trying to use it as a political wedge for the next election. But getting back to, he says, I'm not here to take guns. This is a conspiracy. It was on CNN.
Well, I mean, again.
Well, guess what? Nobody asked him. Tell us exactly what it is you're doing.
People said that. People said that there was a conspiracy.
But that was the question, and he said there's not. But nobody brought up Australia. Nobody brought up Great Britain. That's what he touts as his gun control policy.
It's an apples and orange comparison to begin with, because we don't have the same culture they do.
But I'm asking, what exactly is Barack Obama's intention? Really?
And you're asking me that?
Yeah. Yeah.
John,
I want you to put on your decoder ring, and I want you to tell me.
John, as a retired federal official, I think you're in a much better position to answer that question than I am.
To go to the Aspen to go skiing, I often talk to him about these things, when we're having dinner together.
Right.
So
well, you're a little behind the time. I do it over a couple of plates of cocaine with him.
Wow. Wow.
He gets real gabby when he gets a few rails in him.
We are actually.
Roger Rod said that, Mr. President. R-O-D-D, Roger Rod, 2 Ds.
You know where to find me. I need all the ink I can get.
Go ahead, John.
But we could address 75% of the gun violence in this country that has nothing to do with what we call the mass shootings, which are typically committed by insane people. What we seem to do in this country is ignore what's going on in our inner cities, which is where the vast majority of the deaths are occurring. Because I don't count suicide by gun as the things we can address in law enforcement. But what we can address is the incredible number of shootings and desensitization that we see in our inner cities with gun violence. And it's not through gun control. It's through just a simple strategy of identifying these active serial shooters, taking every shooting seriously, getting on it very quickly, and getting the kid off the street somehow. And when we look at ShotSpotter and technology, when we put ShotSpotter up in Denver, the chief went out and test fired the gun a couple of times to see what worked better, ShotSpotter or 911. After his 5th shot in the area we put it in, and no one had called 911 yet, he walked over to a door, knocked on it. An elderly grandmother answered the door and says, "Ma'am, I'm the chief, blah, blah. Did you hear those gunshots?" He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, did you call 911? And she said, "Well, Chief, that's not our protocol. I take the grandkids down into the basement. We hide in this corner."
That's a protocol now. It happens so regularly.
Yeah.
There's a protocol.
There's people, I understand a lot of our people don't live in the inner cities and the bad areas, but some people are stuck there and they have no way to get out. But by God, nobody deserves to go to sleep to the sound of gunfire in the inner cities of the U.S.
I mean, having a protocol, that's like if you lived in Baghdad or something, you'd have a protocol.
Exactly. So my point is we can do better in law enforcement. We can spend our limited resources. ATF spends the vast majority of their resources today buying small amounts of narcotics. That's what they love to do. They love to be Crockett and Tubbs and go out and pretend to be badasses and buy dope. And it's great. I understand it's fun. But what we really need to spend our limited resources on is identifying these kids, these young men who are shooting at people regularly, get in front of them before they commit a murder, and try to get them off the streets and let them at least know that somebody's paying attention. If you pull a trigger in this town, we're going to pay attention. I guarantee you, you shoot a gun in the south side of Chicago, people are going to ignore it. You shoot a gun on the north side of Chicago, you're going to have all kinds of law enforcement. And
that's the same way out here. You go to Watts and shoot a gun off, it's no big deal. Go to Beverly Hills and do that, though, and see what happens. So all
these people who live in the nice neighborhoods need to understand something. We have a thing called cars and a highway system. So no matter how you think this isn't going to affect you someday, eventually it will. So the best way to reduce gun violence in this country is actually take the offense of criminal shooting seriously throughout this nation. And I've been to Tulsa PD, I've been to Oklahoma PD, I've been around the nation talking to chiefs of police, and this is true everywhere. We don't really get hardcore about a shooting until there's a dead body on the ground. So if you want your shooting to be investigated, you need to be good enough to die at the crime scene.
Yikes.
It seems to me that the family should be the first responder in terms of identifying problems with their offspring or with their family members, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. And it seems like a lot of time should be spent nursing that and developing that protocol somehow through mental health, through the medical industry with physicians, and asking those questions whether somebody is displaying this type of behavior, because there's always somebody saying, "Well, we knew he was."
Oh, yeah, later on. People aren't shocked. It just didn't seem too much.
We knew this. We knew this.
I keep going back to the courts. It's the same thing in the way we treat the crimes. It's not even just necessarily gun violence. How about the idea that somebody butchers somebody with an axe, they don't die, and they call that attempted murder? What are you going to say? Come back when you get it right? You've already seen somebody does not belong anywhere near the streets any longer, probably shouldn't be alive, but we don't have these kinds of justice things in place. We have a legal system of chicanery and games.
Well, Sharia does that, I believe.
That's another topic for a different show.
Oh,
hey, we're going to take a break. John, you going to hang with us through the break, sir?
I'm here.
Outstanding. Okay, folks, going to take a break, but hey, feel free to call in 323-293-3375. Someone just tweeted a question, and we'll address that too when we get back. All right, we'll see you guys in a second. All right, and so we're back from our break, and again, our topic is the executive actions to reduce gun violence. And on the line with us, we have John Risenhoover, who's a retired ATF agent and a gun blogger. So where were we? We're talking about laws and laws being enforced, et cetera. Now, one of the things the president did address, John, that you touched on was death from suicide, gun death from suicide. Now, of course, we can't count that as gun violence necessarily. But I think that was part of the reason that he wanted to talk about mental health treatment.
That's part of the 33,000 people that they quote that die from
gun violence every year.
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing is, when people want to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves, right? I mean, typically, however, one of the reasons that law enforcement has such a high suicide rate compared to other professions, besides the stress of it, there are other stressful jobs, is that firearms are a part of our lives. We have easy access to firearms. In fact, we have mandatory access to firearms. So I think there is something there, but it doesn't matter. If somebody wants to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves if they really want to do it. So we need to be careful when we talk about gun violence, that we are not lumping in suicide victims unless it's a murder-suicide type of a situation, because that's not something that poses a threat to other people in society.
And they may all be also lumping in legitimate, lawful defensive use of firearms where they have shot somebody.
But people legitimately killed in self-defense and et cetera, right? So, John, anyway, I just wanted to touch on that because you did mention that about not counting that as gun violence. You there?
Did we lose John?
Did we lose John?
No, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Think how many police shootings are actually suicide by cop.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, quite a few.
So, yeah, again, nobody wants to take on the real gun violence that's occurring in this country, which is young men who are immature and stupid shooting each other over women, respect, and existing feuds. And the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire career is the fact that DEA has been able to convince everybody that every shooting that occurs in Chicago is somehow linked back to the Mexican cartel. It's not. In fact, when we actually look at these active serial shooters, the criminal shooters on the streets, we only see about 4% of them even have an arrest for narcotics. These are
really,
we need to focus on the criminal act of shooting a gun. I'm not talking about self-defense shootings. I'm not talking about going to the range. I'm talking about when you shoot at somebody criminally, and we need to take that seriously because most of the shots fired that are recorded through this nation are all actually attempted murders. But for statistical purposes, we recategorize almost everything. When I came on in San Antonio, if you shot up a house 30 years ago, they would actually look at that as an aggravated assault if you shot up an occupied residence.
Sure.
Now, it's an illegal discharge of a firearm, don't forget the dash because that's where it all happens.
Right.
Discharge of a fireman into an occupied residence. Because the uniform crime reporting never looks past the dash. So everybody has figured out a way to keep crime stats down, and we don't have enough police officers to investigate crime.
Well, that's nationwide. I mean, the people who say, well, crime is down in my city, you should look, because there's this phenomenon known as policing with a pencil,
right,
where crimes are misclassified and reported differently so that it doesn't reflect poorly on the job that the police department, the police chief, the mayor, the sheriff, et cetera, are doing. So the mayor can say, well, hey, crime is down. Is it down, or did things that were reported as felonies just downgraded? Are they just been downgraded to misdemeanors? So again, we call that policing with a pencil, and it's just sweeping it under the rug because the stuff doesn't go away.
I think you should be using your resources to pay attention to areas where there is a high propensity for Democrat voting, liberal voting. Really. If you look at all the shootings that go down, they seem to be in liberal states, liberal cities.
Gun-free zones.
Lily white kids, offspring of other lily whites that probably half the time probably lived in California and migrated from California to another state.
Really? So Adam Lanza was from California? Dylan Roof was from California?
Adam Lanza, the guy in
Jared Loeffner in California?
Adam Lanza in Connecticut?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his father, I think either his mother or his father, I think, were originally from California, and I think they relocated to, was it Connecticut, right?
Connecticut, yeah.
I believe so. I think there's a California connection there.
So California should secede from the nation, according to Kent, and then we won't have any of these
and
issues.
we'd be okay.
We actually have two tweets. One is a quick one, and that's from our absent co-host today, Gil Contreras at XCOP 1035. He says, the president executive order was a bunch of nothing. Well, I say this. There was a lot of nothing in there. There's a little bit of something. But, yeah, I feel you, Gil.
But he had to do something.
He had to do something. Somebody had to do something. So here's the tweet we got earlier that was early on in the show from Ismail at, I can't pronounce your Twitter name there, Ismail, sorry. But the question is like to know what was done in the 67 Gun Act during the Black Panther Party and today. So what he's referring to is the Mulford Act that came about in California. And you may hear, and this is yet another reason I'm not a huge fan of the NRA anymore once I heard about all this, but other reasons too. The NRA was not always pro-open carry like we see today. The NRA actually, after the Black Panthers, and you can Google this for you youngsters, not the comic book hero Black Panther, but there was an organization called the Black Panther Party that was big advocates for social justice on the behalf of black people in this country. and they some people
terrorist
say
group.
Well, yeah, and some people call them that, but you remember this: one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? Depends on how you look at it, right?
Well, we're going to get far with this.
But no, because you're going to let me finish this part.
Okay.
So the Black Panthers went to the State House in Sacramento, and they went in carrying guns, openly carrying rifles, shotguns, etc., completely within the confines of existing law. They were not loaded. They made no threats to anybody. I don't think they even said anything. They just went to the State House and stood in mass in the State House, as they were legally allowed to do. Well, right after that, of course, the law got changed. And then Governor Ronald Reagan signed the law that was, again, called the Mulford Act. And the NRA supported that, I guess we're talking about the 1968 Gun Control Act, too. But that came after, because the Mulford Act was in 1967. So basically, that came out of a civil action taken by a civil disobedience type of action taken by the Black Panther Party in 1967 in California. So when we talk about Ronald Reagan being pro-gun and we talk about the NRA being pro-gun, maybe it just depends on who's carrying the guns. And I've said that for a long time. So this is a perfect example of that. So to answer your question, that's what that was about. It was the Mulford Act and the NRA not supporting open carry at the time.
Times change.
Times change.
The NRA
just like the Republicans and Democrats have flip-flopped from before. So yeah, times change.
Is not the end all to everything. Sometimes they take up causes that make state-level gun rights organizations pull their hair out. I mean, nothing's perfect. By the way, the Mulford Act, if it was signed in by Reagan, was a state.
Yes, sure.
It was a state act.
Yeah, he was governor of California.
The 68.
67 was when actually
the 68
came
Act
in.
was a federal act.
68 was federal, 67 was Mulford, yeah. 68, Lyndon Johnson was in office, and the 68 Gun Control Act came through.
Right. And you don't like the NRA because of that?
No, I don't like the NRA because they've been bought and paid for by the gun manufacturers, and they don't represent the shooters.
Okay, so what percentage of their proceeds are coming from gun
manufacturers? We ain't going into that right now. We ain't got that much time left.
You don't have the information, that's why.
Anyway, no, I do, but we don't have that kind of time. I'm like
NRA.
Obama in the last year of his presidency. I ain't got time for this.
Yeah.
All right, but we'll get back to it.
We don't have time for him either.
Okay, so we do have to start wrapping, but there's one point we haven't touched
White,
yet.
I don't rap.
And that's the standard line. Shaping the future of gun safety technology. So for a lot of people would like the option, and even in some law enforcement situations, there may be a need for an option to have smart gun technology, which is that the gun cannot be fired unless the shooter is wearing a bracelet, a ring, or something that's in proximity to the actuating mechanism in the pistol or handgun to allow that gun to fire. And there was a push to do this some years ago, and it went nowhere. And now apparently the federal government is going to be conducting research into that.
It went nowhere because the companies who had the technology and the patents on the technology were quickly discovering what it was that the federal government had in mind in terms of gun control, and they decided that they did not want to bring that technology to market because of that. And I don't have time to go on that either because
sure, I know. I've heard this though.
Yeah.
I've heard this.
So the federal government is going to start funding technology, probably through NASA. I'm sure they got to put NASA to work doing something.
No, and DARPA. I think it's going to be through DARPA, actually.
Okay. And they're going to try to come
And DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. DARPA is the one that makes the combat robots you may see, like they have a sand flea robot that can jump, and they have a cheetah that can run 28 miles an hour for like as long as it's got power.
So how do you feel?
That kind of stuff.
Well, how do you feel about that, George?
I think that there is a market for it.
No, I'm talking about how. Okay, there's a market for it, but how do you feel about that politically and about as a gun owner yourself? Where do you think that all goes to? What's the forecast for this? How are they going to use it?
Okay, so as someone who is willing to lend an ear to conspiracy theories, if you can convince me that Humpty Dumpty was pushed, I'll listen. I think that there is certainly the potential for abuse, because if the gun can be activated only by a bracelet, then maybe it can be deactivated by someone who makes sure that those guns don't have that. However, I've got plenty of guns that will never have that technology on them. Okay, there's millions of guns that will never have that technology on them.
Are you okay then?
I'm okay with the idea of it being made available as an option, and here's why.
As an option.
As an option for people who want that. And here's where it could be useful.
The nose under the tent.
Huh?
The nose under the tent.
Okay. Well, you know what?
Okay. That's okay.
As an option.
Okay.
Because you know what? You may not want to have GPS on your car. You may not want OnStar so they can track your movements all the time.
Nobody likes that.
You may
Nobody
not want
likes
that. So I got it on my car. Yeah. But here's the deal. I've had students, one of the things I do is I teach firearms too. Teach a course called Women's Basic Handgun. And I've had women come through that course who have just bought guns, and they're concerned about using the gun properly, and they want to make sure the gun never falls into the wrong hands in terms of one of their children being hurt by it, or somebody getting that gun away from them and hurting them. So I could understand why that person would want to have the option to have a gun that could not be fired by someone unless they had a corresponding piece of hardware, be it a bracelet, ring, etc. I understand that's an option. Coming from an aviation law enforcement background, anytime you have police officers who are behind screening, they say you can't take any guns back there. There's police officers back there with guns, okay? If someone were to overpower a police officer who was behind an airport screening station and was using the restroom or just simply caught off guard, then that person would have a gun that they could get on the airplane with. In that case, it may be useful to have technology that would not allow that gun to be fired unless that person also had the corresponding piece of hardware that went with it. So I agree that there is a market for this technology, and I think it should be developed as long as it remains optional. And again, I have a bunch of guns that are never going to be retrofitted with that.
You're good
There's
then.
millions, there's tens of millions of guns in this country that will never be retrofitted with that.
Everybody's good then.
Everybody's good.
We're all
then.
good.
Are you going to have your guns retrofitted with that?
Of course not.
Okay, then.
Right.
Me either.
It always
until they mandate it.
It always seems to be the same question with these kinds of things, though. The only folks that are affected by this are those who have nothing criminal in mind. The legal, law-abiding citizens are going to be the ones who comply, and the market value for guns without this technology is going to
go through the roof.
But that is the motivation.
Sure, to go through the roof.
I'm not going to argue that because I don't have a good point on it either side. But I would certainly see that that's listenable.
Yeah, I mean, why not explore? Let's sit down and talk about it at the very least. Nobody wants to talk about it. What's the harm in talking about it? Let's talk about it. And that's where I think the president was going with that is, hey, let's talk about it. Clearly, in his last year, he can't come take your guns. Let's have the conversation.
You're going to be the guy that's an old man. He's going to peek through his window one day, pull the blind back, and find a bunch of stuff happening outside of his house. And he's going to say, how did this happen?
That's you now, though.
Yeah. If you're paying attention, yeah, you'd be peeking out too.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
Sorry, man. We kind of got to tussling here, and we didn't return to our topic with you, but we do have to wrap. How can people find out about your organization, and how can they get involved?
CCW Safe. They can just go visit our website, www.ccwsafe.com. Take a look and see how we can help protect you if you get involved in a critical incident. We're always there for you 24/7, and we're a little different. We actually come at it from the same way the police unions do and the way officer-involved shootings are handled. That's the whole concept behind the company, is to give you the same treatment cops get when they're involved in a shooting. And
to have legal representation, et cetera, right?
Right. Peer support, investigators, expert witnesses, counseling, and just somebody holding your hand and helping you get through the trauma of a real critical incident. Because anybody thinks they're going to go kill somebody and go have pancakes 10 minutes later has never been involved in a shooting.
Exactly. Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
John, I'm currently up for a CCW in Los Angeles, which means I have about the same chance as a stray dog in the Philippines. But if you can put a word in for me, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I'll put a word in for you. It's not the one you want.
City or county?
Yeah.
L.A. City.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, John.
You and Willie Williams.
We're gonna start wrapping, but hey, for those of you who watch the show, we're actually going to be moving to a new time, starting as soon as next week, the 21st. We're going to be coming on at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so that'll give people on the East Coast, you'll be home. People here on the West Coast will already be home, and that'll give more people an opportunity to tweet and call in and give us a ration about our opinions that you may not agree with. Our social media is Twitter. We're at Right Along Radio. Email is at rightalongradioshow@gmail.com. And, send us some ideas for future shows that you may want to hear. One of the things we're going to be talking about is legalization of drugs on a future show. And I know a lot of people have a lot of talk on that one. Now, that one, dear producer Poetess, may need to be a 2-hour show because I know people have plenty to say on that, including our panel. So we will see you guys.
I'll be here
next week. John, thank you for joining us. Roger and Kent, good
thank
job.
you for having me.
Roger, you got social media info you want to give out, sir?
Roger Rod, ROGER, ROGER, RODD at, fuck it, I'm good.
Okay. Are you going to be appearing any place anytime soon?
Yes, I'm going to be in Culver City tomorrow night and Saturday night in Palmdale, and I'm in Vegas the week after.
Oh, no, I told you I'll be out there too for SHOT Show.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, so maybe come see your show or something.
Perfect.
All right, folks. Hey, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next week at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the Morris Media Network.